Hey, now welcome to the show, where the wind's blowing strong and the truth can flow. This is the good oil. Catch a vibe today with Cam Slater leading us all the way from the heart of the...
I absolutely love cigars. It's part of my health journey to recovering from my stroke. As a result, I decided to sign up for a monthly subscription service for cigars from Canteros. I'm in the Hemingway Club, and every month Grant, the cigar merchant, sends me 4 or 5 cigars. This is from the February cigars, and we have one of my absolute favourite brands of cigars. It's a Fratello, and this is a classic torpedo shape. You might have seen cigars in this shape in Tintin comics. Fratello is run by a guy who used to be a NASA scientist and decided he wanted to make cigars, and he makes some of the best cigars in the world. These are the kinds of cigars that you get sent every month in the Hemingway Club. You can sign up at canteros.nz, and I highly recommend all of their cigars, and the selection that Grant sends you is second to none. This, for example, it was only 5,000 cigars made. There was 500 boxes of 10. Grant secured some of those so you can experience the superb taste of New World cigars. Right, here we are at episode 25 of the Good Oil podcast, and my guest this week is Lucy Rogers. Welcome.
Hello.
What's the best way to describe you? You're a silent protester, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Well, I was on the day of my arrest. I was standing silently, and I'm almost invariably silent unless I'm with a group protest where I might, lead the chants.
Yeah.
But I never once, in all the time that I have been protesting now, I have never got into a yelling match with the other side.
Right, so you're usually just holding up a sign, making a particular point that you might be making on that day, but other than that, just standing there out of the way.
Yep, and you're quite right to say that I'm holding a sign. I have never once held the Israeli flag. I've been protesting in context about the Palestine-Israel conflict. Never once held the Israeli flag. I always have signs because a pro-Israel position per se is not my view. My view is let's have some balance here. And so that's what I was doing on the day of my arrest. I was holding a sign saying selective condemnation of genocide is evil. In other words, hey guys, there's just been a genocide of Israeli civilians and you guys are protesting against Israel.
Well, they were protesting the day after
October
7 that there was a genocide happening against the Palestinians.
Yes, and this was, in Auckland, they announced on October the 10th, the Palestine Solidarity Network, Aotearoa, announced that they were protesting against Israel. And this is literally while the Israelis are still counting the bodies. And they explicitly accused it of genocide at that point, even though Israel hadn't started its ground offensive in Gaza.
No, it's ridiculous. But before the Israel-Gaza conflict kicked off, have you been to protests before? Have you voiced opinions or decided to stand up against anything before? Is just this one incident you decided you were going to...
like any other New Zealander, I've protested about various things from time to time.
Yeah.
So in 2010, I protested against the national government mining the Coromandel.
Right.
So sure, I've protested about various things, but I wouldn't say that I was a veteran protester.
Right.
I'm not a member of any political party. I don't, not formally a member of any political party. And in fact, I consider myself to be apolitical but left-leaning.
Right.
And I certainly wasn't part of any pro-Israel lobby group or any lobby group to do with that conflict. So this wasn't my cause in life.
No. You're just an ordinary citizen going about life, and you've felt something needed to be said.
Yes.
So what triggered that?
At the time, this was November 2023.
Yeah.
It was very shortly after the horrific events of October 7, 2023.
Yeah.
For anyone who's unaware, some really terrible things took place on that day. Hamas invaded Israel.
That's what people forget, isn't it?
Yes.
Hamas actually crossed the border and invaded Israel.
Yes. they massacred civilians, and we're talking torture, rape, dismemberment, setting people on fire, killing children, killing women, mass murder, and the kidnapping, of course, of 250 hostages into Gaza. And yet, 3 days after that, there are protests against Israel. I mean, what is Israel supposed to do when there are 250 hostages? I don't think it's terribly realistic to think that Israel should just not retaliate at all. But anyway, yes, you asked me about, sorry, it was the day of my arrest. And what was the specific question?
Well,
that was
I
the
was just
context.
saying, you've protested a couple of things in the past. You're generally apolitical, although leaning left, right? I think before we started this interview, you were saying about your father had a personal policy of always voting for the opposition.
My grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather.
Yep.
So there's no political bone in your body. I mean, I'm highly political, right? I've been brought up all my life and surrounded by politics. It's the game that I play, and I enjoy it.
Sorry. Yeah, I now remember the question that you asked.
Yeah.
And that is, how did I sort of come to be involved in this? So,
Yes.
But I wanted to provide the context, and now I've remembered the question, so I'll go back to where I was going with it. So this was November the 25th, 2023.
Yeah.
And I was, I'm a junior criminal defence lawyer, and I was part of the legal team representing a client in a 4-week jury trial in Auckland District Court.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you're working on a jury trial, you have to work evenings and weekends. So I was working on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I had no intention of protesting that day. I had, as I say, I'd never been involved in protesting anything to do with the Palestine-Israel conflict before. But after working for about, 6 hours, 7 hours, I, as the junior, was sent out to get coffee. And I walked outside and I could hear chanting coming from the waterfront. And I realised that this was an anti-Israel protest. And I was I was not in a fit of rage. My primary reaction actually was a very deep grief. Grief that this country, New Zealand, had got to this point where they're so intellectually dishonest that they would protest against Israel in this context. And so I thought, well, I've got to do something, and I wanted to keep it short because I had to get back to work. I was supposed to be getting coffee, so I thought, but I'll just stand there for like a couple of minutes with a sign. So I walked into a nearby shop, the Look Sharp store on Victoria Street East, where you can buy A2 pieces of paper. Bought an A2 piece of paper, and wrote on it in about 30 seconds, selective condemnation of genocide as evil. Then walked outside, walked down Queen Street towards the protesters who were walking up Queen Street.
So it's very much spur of the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but where I'm going with this is, well, I'll say this and then I'll just pause. But I came to a stop near to the protest. And I was I was literally exactly 5 metres from the edge of the curb, and I know that because I later measured it.
Right.
So I was 5 metres from the edge of the curb because Queen Street footpaths are enormous. And
getting bigger.
Yes. Well, they don't like car drivers, you see.
No, that's right.
So I was intentionally standing 5 metres from the edge of the curb, consciously, because I thought that was being responsible in context. But I came to my chosen spot, stood still, and there were police officers who were accompanying the protest towards the front. And within less than 3 seconds of my arrival, they came up to me and started assaulting me. They pushed me along the footpath for about 5 metres without talking to me first.
Yeah.
Point being that I hadn't intended to be there for very long at all, a couple of minutes, but they weren't prepared to let me do even that much. So there's
So you
the
hadn't
answer
said
to
a
your
word.
question.
All you were doing is standing there,
Yes,
holding up a sign
silently. A politically moderate sign, I should add.
Well, it's a fairly benign statement.
Yep.
I mean, it's loaded, but it's not outrageous.
It's just condemning violence on both sides.
Yes. and the police pushed and
Yep.
jostled you, and eventually...
I mean, you can see the footage.
Oh, yes.
I'll provide it to you, Cam. Maybe you can include it with this. I don't know. Maybe you can't. But you
I'm
can
sure I
see how aggressively they push me along the footpath. But I'll let you ask some more questions before.
No, it's all right. Carry on. Just...
Okay, sure. Well, before they had even finished pushing me along the footpath, while they were still pushing me, and we have this on video, you can hear it said, they were already threatening to arrest me before they had even spoken to me.
On what charges?
They didn't
On what
say at that
grounds?
point. They did not say.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it? You're a criminal defence lawyer,
Yes.
and the police are... and you would have heard from heaps of your clients that certain things happen with the police, and you might not have ever believed it, and now it's happening live to you.
Yeah, well, before this incident, before my arrest, which is where we're going to in a moment, I had a more or less neutral view of the police.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, there's a section of the public that believes that the police are more trustworthy than the average person. I wouldn't say that I fell into that category, but I was just genuinely neutral. I thought, well, there are good apples and bad apples, and I'd seen a police officer in court before lie, tell serious lies. I'd seen that happen, and I knew he was lying because I knew the evidence, and we won that case. But I just thought, well, he's just a bad apple.
See, I was like you. Right? I was a G-man. They're the police. They're our friend. They're trying to protect us. And then I learnt very quickly after 2018, 2019, that especially if you're a firearms owner, the police are not your friend. That they actually want to set you up. They actually want to get you. And every interaction that I've had with the Firearms Safety Authority or the police has been a negative one, where they outright accuse you of crimes from the get-go. And so my advice to people now is the police are not your friend. Any respect that I had for the police disappeared. And I was never a fence-sitter. I was kind of pro the police. If you're getting whacked by the police, well, you must have deserved it. But then I see incidences like yours and my interactions and things like that I've had with the police. And I'm now at the point where I'm not hostile towards the police, but I'm mindful that they're not my friend.
Yep. I think I'm in a similar position. I mean, I don't really have strong views on the whole firearms thing, but I think that's more or less where I stand. I don't hate them. I don't feel hostile to them. Am I going to treat every single police officer badly because of what some of them have done to me? I know that there are good people in the police. So I don't hate them, but I also don't trust them.
Yeah. It's probably the same position that I'm in. I don't trust them. And then if they're asking me a question, there's a reason for it.
Yep.
And it's not a benign reason. And they always use lines like, oh, look, we're here now, can we just do... And what the next thing they say out of their mouth is actually illegal. And I've witnessed them break the law.
Yep.
Right?
Well, me too.
Right? Exactly. So, everyone's you're hearing comment now from people out there that can the police be trusted, or the trust has fallen in the police. And we'll touch on that a little bit later in the discussion. But it's things like this that rock your trust in the police when you see and hear and watch them break the law.
Well, wait till you hear what I have to say about what I have to say in a moment.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I've read all your articles and I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, you're persistent, but they've kind of bitten off more they can chew with you from what I can see, right? You're very particular and you document everything, and documentation and facts destroy their narrative all the time.
Yep.
So let's go back. You're standing there, they've pushed you away, they're talking about arresting you. You're not saying anything. If I recall the video myself, I don't think you said too much at all, really.
Well, they threatened to arrest me before they had even finished pushing me along the footpath. Then we came to a stop. They were satisfied with where I was standing, and that, by the way, that's important for what I'm about to say in a moment. They pushed me to that spot. That was where they wanted me to be. And then they threatened to arrest me again. They said, leave or we'll arrest you. And I said, well, go ahead and arrest me because I'm not leaving. I have a right to be here. I don't specifically remember what he said in response to that, but suffice it to say that they didn't arrest me at that point, even though he'd just told me that I would be unless I left. And then I held my sign back into the air and stood there silently while they were standing in front of me for about 60 seconds exactly. Again, I know this because we later had footage. But after about 60 seconds exactly, I was still standing there silently. None of the crowd were, well, you know, the vast majority of the crowd were not taking any interest in me at all. Most of them hadn't even noticed me. There were a couple of people who were, like, standing in front of me looking at the sign, but nobody yelled at me. Not one person yelled at me. They were not surging towards me, and they weren't getting aggressive at me.
So the antagonism and the aggression was coming from the police?
Yes. And I wasn't yelling at them, so nobody was yelling. I was completely silent. They weren't really. They weren't yelling at me. They were just continuing to walk on down Queen Street, and I was silently standing there with my sign. And at the time I was thinking, well, what they've just done is really appalling and shocking. But okay, I'll swallow it because now they've decided that it's okay for me to stand here, so I'll stand here, whatever. And at least now they've found a spot that they like, and I'll just stand here silently with my sign and ignore what's just happened. Mm. But I did that for about 60 seconds when up behind me, Senior Sergeant Vaughan Perry came up behind me and snatched the sign out of my hands.
So he actually stole from you?
Yes, he did.
And in doing so assaulted you at the same time?
Well, he didn't assault me, but he stole my sign. The other cops assaulted me.
Yeah.
I whirled around and said, how dare you? And then he started walking away up Queen Street with most of my sign. It tore in half when he took it off me. And so I walked after him and I demanded my sign back. Give me back my sign. He refused to give me back my sign. So I got my phone out and started recording because even at that point I suspected that the police were going to lie about me, and I was correct. Mm. They later did. Started recording police QID numbers, the ID numbers that are on their shoulder.
Yeah.
And recorded their faces so that I had a record of who was there.
Criminal defence lawyer.
Yes.
You just went on to automatic, didn't you?
And then walked up to Vaughan Perry and said to him, can you just tell me what you've just done? You've just told me that I can't hold up a sign saying that selective condemnation of genocide is evil. And the reason I did that is that I wanted him to clarify what was on the sign because I was concerned that the police might lie about that. Yeah. I mean, they could say something disgusting. They could say, I don't know, that I had a swastika on there. So I wanted confirmation of what was on the sign because I thought that would be something that the police would lie about. He refused to reply. And then one of the other police assaulted me again at this point. She came and shoved me and was pushing me, and it's all on camera.
So who took this footage? Because
we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. It's a remarkable story in itself, actually. But anyway, so he, out of my sight, sneakily put the sign under his arm and to the person behind him, and so I couldn't see where it had gone. So the sign was gone, and so I walked up to one of the police officers, the one who just assaulted me, and said, right, well, I'm going to stand right here, by which I meant a spot on the footpath where I had a clear and unobstructed view of the protest, because I wanted to make a point to the police that they were not going to shut me up. So, okay, well, you've stolen my sign. Well, I'll protest here silently. Thank you very much. And she said, no, you aren't. And she said, you can stand right there, by which she meant with her and another of the police obstructing my view of the protest.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I am. I mean, what are you going to do? Tell me I can't stand on a footpath? Where does it say that in the law? My point being that I wasn't wearing anything that indicated my views at this point. I wasn't.
Well, you'd been at work.
Yeah, I was draped. I was not draped in an Israeli flag. I wasn't wearing a Star of David. I didn't have a sign. So I was literally wanting to stand silently on the footpath where I could see the protesters. And where does it tell me in the law that I can't do that?
I like using that line with the police. Show me in the law where it says it.
And and she just lathered on, and I thought, well, this is a waste of time. And so I walked to my right-hand side again to try and find an unobstructed spot where I could view the protesters. At which point she and one of the other police officers, the one who threatened to arrest me before they'd even finished pushing me, grabbed me, frog marched me over to the side of the footpath and put me in handcuffs. They then walked me to the police van where there was a portable cell and locked me in there for 15 minutes. I asked to speak to a lawyer before they put me in there. And I said, I'm actually a criminal defence lawyer and I'd like to speak to one of my colleagues who is on the roster of lawyers who provide initial legal advice to people who've been arrested. His name's on there, his phone number's in my contacts, and I want to call him, please. They refused to let me do so. They would not let me speak to a lawyer. That is illegal. And it's actually, I told the story to another criminal defence lawyer. When I said that, she gasped. Because it is a shocking matter that when someone asks to speak to a lawyer and they have the legal right to do so, that they're not permitted to. And so I said, well, here's a colleague. Can I at least call him to tell him where I am? Because I'm supposed to be getting coffee and I'm at a work meeting. And so they said that they would call him. They took his number, but they didn't ever actually call him. I found out later, I clarified with him, and no, he didn't receive any calls. Anyway, so
It's quite astonishing, really, when you start cataloguing it, isn't it?
They searched me and they asked me if I was carrying any weapons, which was beyond ridiculous. And I will say that it was quite humiliating because members of the public are watching and they think that you've done something wrong. Because the police would never arrest someone unless they've done something
Not
wrong,
during
right?
handcuffs, no less.
Yeah.
I mean, standing there silently is clearly a danger to the public and you need to be restrained.
So then they locked me in the portable cell, still in handcuffs, and waited there for 15 minutes. There was a window so that I could see into the front of the van. And I said, after about 15 minutes, I realised that the colleague whose number I'd provided to them might have his phone off. So I said to them, hey, I've just realised that he might have his phone off. Could you please call another colleague whose number is also in the contacts of my phone, who's also at the same work meeting? Rather than call that number, they immediately stopped the van and let me out. And then they said, we will let you go if you will undertake not to come back today. And I said, well, okay, I'll agree to that because I actually have places to be. But if it wasn't for the fact that I have places to be, I would be giving you no such undertaking and I would be getting back in that cell. But I actually did have a work meeting to get to and I had to leave.
And get some coffees.
Yes. And but I said I am not undertaking not to come back to future protests. In fact, I have every intention to now that you've arrested me.
You've got a point to prove now.
Precisely. But they released me at that point. Yeah, you want to ask follow-up questions?
I'm just enjoying the story because, it's unbelievable the lengths that the police will go when they've decided, rightly or wrongly, and wrongly in this case, that you're a certain type of person that they want to shut down.
No, it's much worse than that.
Well, tell us about that then.
I don't think that this was ideological. I don't think it had anything to do with my political opinions. I think this was a power trip. Plain and simple, they enjoy
so just
bullying people. Yep.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that it would have been the same regardless of what I'd had on that sign and regardless of the political context. The Senior Sergeant Vaughan Perry, the one who confiscated my sign, has previous for kidnapping and bullying someone.
Really?
He was prosecuted in 2016 for kidnapping someone while on duty. And this is all publicly available, well, not only in...
How is he still a police officer?
Oh, we'll get to that. So it's all publicly available in news articles. I'm not sharing anything confidential. But it's also available in an IPCA report from back at that time. But he and Inspector Huri Moana Dennis kidnapped someone, a teenager, while on duty. And what happened was that this child was apparently in a sexual relationship with an underage girl, and his family did not approve of the relationship. So they asked Huri Moana Dennis, whom they knew in a personal capacity, to intervene. So they put this kid through a mock arrest for statutory rape, without telling him that it was only a mock arrest. In other words, they wanted to scare him. But totally illegal. You're not allowed to do this. It was without his consent. But they locked him in the cells, and then they forced him to move to Australia. They said, well, you can either move to Australia away from your girlfriend so that you can't have sex with her, or we're going to prosecute you for rape, which is blackmail. And
as soon as they say you can either do this or this will happen to you,
yes,
that is blackmail.
Yep.
That's the classic textbook example of blackmail.
I mean, the whole thing is extremely shocking. You can go off and read the IPCA report, but basically they were prosecuted, found not guilty on a criminal standard of proof, but the IPCA, who have a civil standard of proof on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt, found that, yeah, they did do these things.
We'll talk about the IPCA in a little bit more in depth because...
Well, hang on a second. Because this is stuff that... There's an ending to this story that I think the public need to know.
Yeah.
So what happened was... and this is all in the IPCA report. I mean, it's there in black and white. I'm not making this stuff up. It's not my conjecture.
No.
This is in the IPCA report about that guy's arrest. The employment investigation into Vaughan Perry's actions was completed within the space of 1 week. 1 week? I believe that the IPCA report says that this was done without consulting the guy who'd been arrested, but I don't remember that for sure. But what I do remember is that the IPCA, and by the way, for any listeners who don't understand the dynamics, the IPCA is a totally separate institution from the police. So this was a police investigation, employment investigation, not an IPCA one.
Yeah.
But the police investigation intentionally, according to the IPCA, shut the IPCA out of the process so that they couldn't express any views on what would happen to Vaughan Perry. They then, so they didn't inform the IPCA until it was too late that the employment investigation was happening. At least that's my recollection, but certainly I remember that the IPCA said that they'd been shut out of the process. The IPCA said that it was strange that another police officer who was less involved than Vaughan Perry received a more severe disciplinary sanction. But in addition to that, the IPCA said that mitigating factors, such as the stress of being prosecuted, were applied to the degree of seriousness that was attributed to Vaughan Perry's actions, rather than to the disciplinary sanction he received. So it was categorized as low in seriousness because, oh, well, he's been prosecuted and he's been all stressed and, oh, how sad.
Oh, poor Diddums.
Yes. Now, what subsequently happened is, so he was given a slap on the hand. The only consequence that he ever faced was an expectation-setting conversation. He was subsequently promoted to senior sergeant.
We all know how
sergeant.
those go, those expectations. Come on, Vaughan, you did something stupid.
Naughty.
Don't do it again. For God's sake, we won't be able to protect you anymore.
Yep. Well, they probably will, actually. We'll just keep protecting you, don't worry.
Well, there's a culture, isn't there? I mean, look at the fuss that we've had with Costa and McSkimming and the HR woman who ended up at the head of the Firearms Safety Authority. There's a culture in the police at a certain level of protecting...
Lack of accountability.
Yeah,
yep.
Lack of accountability and protecting those who are deemed worthy of protection.
So following the fact that he had flouted the law, had kidnapped someone, had forced him to move to Australia against his will, the police protected him and then gave him a slap on the hand, subsequently promoted him to senior sergeant. He'd just been a sergeant before, and he's now the commander of the Armed Defenders Squad.
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure I'd want someone like that as the commander of the Armed Defenders Squad. It'd be ready, fire, aim.
Yeah. Well, he's literally calling the shots, and this is the guy, as I'm about to get to, who accused me of screaming at the anti-Israel protesters in a state of excited delirium, quote.
So that
He
was
said that
was
he
that
thought-
in a statement?
It's in
a
his
sworn
notebook.
statement?
It's in a notebook entry, and then he repeats that he thought that I was mentally ill in a signed statement.
And he's a trained psychiatrist, is he?
Yes. Well,
A defence lawyer would make mincemeat of that in court.
well, that's not the point, because the point is that when these kind of allegations are made against you by the commander of the Armed Defenders Squad, everyone thinks, well, the commander of the Armed Defenders Squad must be a wonderful person.
He wouldn't lie.
He wouldn't lie. But he accused me of screaming at people in a state of excited delirium that he thought that I was suffering from mental illness, and that I had to be arrested for my own good. And this was echoed by a number of other witnesses who also accused me of mental illness and of shouting at people. And this guy, who accused me of mental illness and who's the commander of the Armed Defenders Squad, has a previous history of kidnapping people,
Illegal behaviour.
blackmailing them, and then completely getting away with it because the police sheltered him from consequences. And what really I found extraordinary is that his partner in crime, if you'll pardon the pun.
Well, they are committing crimes.
They are committing crimes. His partner in crime, Inspector Hurimwana Dennis, who the two of them kidnapped this young teenager before forcing him to move to Australia. This man, Hurimwana Dennis, left the police of his own accord, and then a couple of years later, I think it was in the 2022 New Year's Honours Awards, was awarded the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to Māori and the community.
Right.
Which is just shocking that they didn't look into what the IPCA had said about this man, because he and Vaughan Perry are evil people. Anyway, so you asked me about how it was that Vaughan Perry wasn't disciplined. Well, there's your answer.
So this is the guy that stole the sign off you.
Yep.
He was a senior sergeant, so presumably he's the one who orchestrated the bullying of you on the street.
Yep.
Locking you up.
Yep.
Then releasing you. You've got out, gone and got your coffees, gone back to work, and you've said, boy, have I got a story to tell you, to your colleagues. What did you do then? Because I imagine you were at high dudgeon at this stage.
Well, I was in a state of shock. I live alone with my dad. Following my arrest, he had a seizure.
Oh.
He has only had 4 seizures in his life, and one of them, all of them following major traumatic emotional events. So I was woken up at 4 a.m. by a scream from his bedroom and walked in to find him violently shaking and foaming at the mouth. I was it was a terrible experience. I was also in a state of shock. I couldn't take in what had happened. But really I went to the Free Speech Union very shortly after this incident and asked for their help. But I knew that if I were to take legal proceedings, which is what I've done, then I would basically have to become a public figure, which didn't appeal to me at all. I didn't want this.
You didn't want it.
Because
you just decided on the spur of the moment to make a sign.
Yes. Yep.
And stand there.
Yep.
And now all this has happened.
Well, there were two consequences really. The first is that I had to disclose to the entire country that I'd been arrested. And I saw hundreds of online comments saying, "Oh, well, I wonder what the other side of this story is," you know? "Oh, the police wouldn't do this sort of thing unless she'd done something wrong." I saw people saying this.
Well, but we have seen the police do the exact same thing. We saw it with the Posey Parker
Yes.
situation.
Yep.
Appalling behaviour by the police, and they've got off scot-free.
Yep.
They incited and then assisted with the violence against women that were simply trying to speak.
Yep. So that was the first consequence, that I had to disclose to the whole world that I'd been arrested. An expert that we use for work, because I also work for my dad, said to him, "Oh, well," he was commenting on a client, and he said, "Oh, yeah, he's a bit impulsive. Rather like your daughter, I imagine."
Well, you don't strike me as an impulsive person. You can strike me as a considered person.
Yes, well, really, the decision that I made to protest on that day, although it may have been on the spur of the moment, was really the culmination and the consequence of years of reflection about the person that I want to be. And so it was acutely embarrassing to my dad and to me, because because he had assumed that I'd done something wrong, which I didn't. So that was the first consequence. The second consequence, of course, is that I had kept my political opinions off Google intentionally, because I know that when a person puts their political opinions out there, that it can affect employment. And to be quite frank, I don't think that most of the big firms now would take me if I applied for jobs there, because I'm perceived to be pro-Israel, even though it isn't actually how I would describe myself. And that has been the real cost to me. Well, apart from the cost of being publicly accused of mental illness.
Yeah. So you're in shock. You're kind of working out that this is egregious, that this is wrong, and you're a principled person. I just can pick that up from the way that you're talking. You've decided now you're going to do something about it. You've gone to the Free Speech Union, and there's not a lot of recourse other than through legal means to deal with these sorts of things, is there?
Well, the FSU laid a complaint on my behalf to the IPCA,
Right.
which is, there is a complaint process within the police, and that's it.
Yeah, let's just explain that for a bit, because it is a bit convoluted and complex. And I've got a lot of people who say to me, the IPCA, they're on the side of the police. But I think they confuse that with the internal police review thing.
Yes.
So I know you've written an article about that and the differences between the two and your experiences. So if you can just outline, if you want to complain about the actions of a police officer, how you go about that and what steps there are and where you can go with them.
Sure. So you lay a complaint, everyone lays a complaint to the IPCA, that's how it works. The IPCA then decides how they will categorise your complaint. There's Cat A, Cat B, Cat C and Cat D. Cat A only constitute 3% of complaints, and I was categorised as Cat A, thank God.
So that's the most serious?
Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically. They're the complaints that the IPCA itself does an investigation into. But the vast majority of complaints are not categorised as Cat A. Instead, they are referred back to the police, to a body within the police called Police Professional Conduct, for the police to do an investigation, to investigate and decide, whether there's been something wrong that's been done and disciplinary consequences.
So that's when they get out of the cupboard the big buckets of whitewash and the brushes and liberally apply that to the report.
Yes. But with Cat A, which is what I was, there are actually two investigations. One being the IPCA investigation and one being the police investigation. I wasn't told this when I first laid my complaint. And we'll get to that because that in itself is a shocking story. This is all shocking stuff.
It is all shocking. That's why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because you've written on Kiwi Blog.
Yep.
And it's where most of the things that you've expressed about all of this situation that you found yourself in. But there's a wider audience out there that the media should be picking this sort of thing up, but they're not.
Yep. Where was I? Yeah. So the IPCA, and there are two investigations for Cat A complainants.
Yeah.
There's an IPCA investigation and then there's a police investigation. I didn't know this at the start. Now, what I will say is that even at this point, I knew that there was something badly wrong with police oversight processes, because the impunity with which the police acted, they were totally unconcerned, plainly unconcerned about facing consequences for their actions. They were cool as a cucumber when I recorded their QIDs, and they didn't bother to remove the video that I took from my phone before returning the phone to me, which was a mistake. But I knew then and there is something badly wrong with police oversight. And I was correct. But it took me a long while to figure out what that was, because at first I was told, what you've just basically been saying, Cam, that, the IPCA are not independent, they are... they're in
Rubber
cahoots,
stamp. Yeah.
in cahoots with the police, blah, blah, blah. And because everyone was saying that, I thought that was where the problem lay. But I have come to realise that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I've written about this publicly, as you've mentioned. The IPCA only, as I've mentioned, only investigate 3% of complaints. That is due to funding constraints. They are not intended to investigate the vast majority of complaints, despite the fact that, in fact, IPCA workloads are very high because you have so many thousands of complaints that you take on as many as you can.
Yeah.
But what happens then is that you have thousands of complainants write into the IPCA, in many cases with strong evidence of wrongdoing. And they get a reply back from the IPCA saying, oh, sorry, we can't do anything about this. And we're referring it back to the police for investigation, but we're not going to investigate. That is then perceived as being motivated by support for the police, when in fact it's just how the system works. The IPCA doesn't have any choice. So if only 3% of complaints are investigated by the IPCA and 97% aren't, where do you think, if there is a problem with police oversight, where do you think that lies? I mean, the answer's obvious. It's with the police.
With the police, yeah.
Because it's the police who investigate the vast majority of complaints, and they're investigating their own, so they are extraordinarily biased. And I know that firsthand. They are shockingly biased.
Well, they're marking their own homework, aren't they?
Yes, precisely. So, in fact, my experience of the IPCA was that they were very professional. They're not just professional, they're actually very nice people.
Yeah.
They are decent, they are honest, and I am indebted to them because Sarah Bullen, who was the primary investigator into my case, well, actually, I'll share that story. So I only started recording what was happening on my phone halfway through the incident because I wasn't given advance warning that, the police are about to assault you and steal your sign.
Well, you wouldn't expect that, would you?
Precisely. So what happened was that because I started recording halfway through the incident, the police then exploited that and said that all of this stuff about me screaming people and being mentally ill, etc., had happened before I started recording.
But that doesn't make sense, because if you are, as they say, hysterical and screaming and everything, being arrested would make you more hysterical, wouldn't it?
Well, that's a point that I'm going to be making at trial. But and what they said was, and it's really nasty stuff. They said, and as you can see just from the short snippet of footage that she took, she's worked up and we are cool as a cucumber. So she was shaky. She was speaking quickly. She was sweaty. She was clammy, and we thought that she was mentally ill. Well, all of these things are symptoms of an adrenaline rush, and I didn't have time to prepare to try and suppress an adrenaline rush, whereas they do this stuff every day. So of course they were able to deliberately appear cool and calm and collected. So for them to manipulate that as evidence of my alleged mental illness is just a disgusting thing to say. They really are very evil people. But anyway, I started recording halfway through the incident. They said that all the shouting and screaming and all the other stuff, me acting in a way that indicated mental illness, happened before I started recording. But what happened was that one of the police officers who was involved in my arrest was stupid enough to provide the IPCA with photos that she had found on social media of the events leading up to my arrest. She didn't do this out of the goodness of her heart. It was intended to show, look how helpful I'm being. I couldn't possibly have intended to do something wrong. That was the point behind it. And she knew that photos wouldn't be particularly helpful to me, so she got credit with the IPCA without actually doing anything that would actually help me. But Sarah Bullen, the investigator, had the insight, and I am deeply grateful, profoundly grateful to her for this, and always will be for the rest of my life. She contacted the person who took the photos and said, do you happen to have footage? And miraculously he did, by the grace of God. He had footage of the entire thing from start to finish, because he had been recording on his phone the protest before the incident with me started. So he happened to catch sight of me being assaulted by the police within about a second or two of them starting to assault me. And so he just panned to his right and started recording and got the whole thing on camera.
Good instincts.
Well, no, it wasn't so much that. It was just, there's something interesting happening. Let's record. And he provided that to the IPCA and to me. And it saved my reputation from Vaughan Perry, because no one would have believed me. In the end, there are now 9 Crown witnesses, 9, who are all lying about me, including half a dozen police officers. Imagine how that looks in court when you don't have witnesses of your own. Nobody would have believed me.
Well, there's a famous line about that, isn't it, from the Erebus inquiry, an orchestrated litany of lies.
Yes. Oh, you're well informed. Yes, I've also heard
I am
that.
political, so, orchestrated litany of lies, Justice Mann.
Yep. So it's not without precedent, you're quite right. But at the same time, no one's going to believe you when half a dozen police officers, an ambulance officer said that, who's friends, I believe, with Vaughan Perry, said that she thought that I was mentally ill.
And she's got a psychiatry degree as well.
Well, she's an ambulance officer. She has medical qualifications, Cam.
Well,
there you go. And she played on this heavily. Very nasty stuff. I wouldn't say the stuff about my worst enemy. And yet they were prepared to do this to justify a 5-minute power trip, destroy a woman's life. And the anti-Israel protest organiser, who is the main organiser of the anti-Israel protest, was also approached for an interview, and also accused me of suffering from mental illness, Neil Scott. And believe me, one day he's going to regret that, because I'm going to sue him for defamation along with the others. Anyway, so 9 Crown witnesses.
Never piss off a lawyer.
nine Crown witnesses lying about me to varying degrees of seriousness. Some of them are more serious lies than others, but all of them lied. Or all of them, I should say, all of them said things that weren't true. In one case, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he misunderstood. But 8 out of 9 of them told active lies. And I'll go on the record saying that because it's true. Sue me. Really. But anyway, so when you have 9 witnesses lying about you, 3 of them, including an ambulance officer, say that they thought that you were suffering from mental illness. A 4th, the sergeant below Vaughan Perry, whose name is Robert Bourne, a 4th says that you were shouting. So he didn't say that I was mentally ill, but he said that I was yelling and stuff, that I was inciting a riot. Nobody would have believed me. But we just happened to have footage.
Yeah, without being rude or anything, you don't look like the sort of person who could incite a riot, just quietly.
Well, but the footage disproved everything, because they were describing events that happened while the camera was recording. So they said, we spread out to form a defensive shield around Rogers, and that she was yelling over the top of us and that they were yelling back. Well, we have that on footage, and it didn't happen. They did spread out to form a defensive shield, but there was no yelling. So I have been telling anyone who will listen that the IPCA, and Sarah Bullen in particular, are decent, honest, professional individuals who have completely saved my reputation from some very evil police officers. And I am profoundly grateful. I have dealt with the IPCA a lot over the past 2 years now, and I am absolutely certain of Sarah's honesty and that of Warren Young, who was the other person who was working on my case.
Yeah, I've had a couple of interactions with the IPCA, and I've found the same thing.
Yes. Yep.
I've had findings. I had to use those findings in a court. Those get believed.
Well, there are good reasons why the IPCA is so distrusted. For example, what I've described already, that they have to turn down 97% of complaints.
Yeah, that's not their fault. Right?
But that's not their fault. But it's not. But that's not the only reason that the IPCA is so distrusted. There are a lot of reasons why it's so distrusted. And I've written about this publicly, and what I suggest that people do is go and read about it, because if I went into all the detail, it would just be here all day. But I've written about it on Kiwi Blog. Just type in Google Kiwi Blog Lucy Rogers IPCA, and you'll come up with a series
really
of
good. They're
reflections.
really good reflections of your interactions with the police and with the IPCA, and written in. There's no emotional language in it at all. You're a very matter-of-fact person, right? So it reads really well, and it allows people to understand that there is a distinction between the internal police investigations and the IPCA.
Yep. Well, although I'm speaking of the IPCA in glowing terms, and rightfully so, the complete opposite is true of the police investigation. So you want to go there?
Sure.
So
We'll just jump into that little nest of vipers.
I wasn't even informed that there had been a police investigation until the police put out a press release in response to the IPCA report, saying that they thought that my arrest was justified, and reiterating alleged facts about my arrest, which were debunked in the IPCA report to which they were responding. This was like over a year after my original complaint. By this time, they had concluded the investigation. It was closed, and they hadn't even told me that there had been an investigation. And I should emphasise that this is a normal investigation like into any crime.
And they didn't interview you for it either.
Yep, well, that's the point. That's where I'm going. It's a normal investigation like into any crime, where you have a complainant, you take their statement, you have the other side, you take their statement, you get all the evidence together, and then you form a conclusion. Yep. That's what they meant by an investigation. But I was never told that the investigation was even happening. I was never interviewed. When I inquired, once I found out, oh my gosh, there's been an investigation, a police investigation separate from the IPCA investigation, and they haven't interviewed me, I contacted them and was like, what the hell is going on? And they said, oh, we're sorry. We sent you.
Sorry, not sorry.
We sent you a singular email in April 2024, inviting you to be interviewed, but we misspelt it. So there was a typo in the email address, and so it never reached you. But we took your non-reply as a lack of desire to engage with the investigative process.
So hang on, let's get this straight. They mistyped your email address and you didn't get the email,
Yep.
and then they've decided that because you didn't reply to the email you didn't get,
Yes.
that you didn't want to engage in the process.
Yes.
Right, okay.
So,
My suspicious mind says you deliberately misspelled that.
well, that's what I thought at first. I did think, well, I wasn't sure, but I thought that was a very live possibility. I've come to believe, though, that the investigator and his supervisor, I do believe, after long reflection, that they were honest. So I don't think that he did send that with a deliberate misspelling.
But they weren't. But they weren't. Didn't have an inquiring mind, did they? Though.
No.
If we haven't had a response here, what should we do?
I haven't finished the story yet. So they, what simply happened was they had a couple of police officers, not all of them, provide written statements. They had the ambulance officer provide a statement. They had another witness whom I met when I got out of the van, and she beckoned me over, provide a statement, but she did a 180 on me. She said, "Oh my goodness." At the time she said, "Oh my goodness, like, what was on the sign? Like, I saw that." Like, and then I said, "Well, would you be a witness?" And she said, "Sure." But then, and the FSU contacted her and said, "So you're happy to be a witness?" She said, "Absolutely." But then 3 months later, she decided that presumably decided that she didn't want to be part of this. And so she told the police, "I only saw Lucy get out of the police van. I didn't see the rest of it, and I told her that I wasn't going to lie for her." Completely stabbed me in the back. So they had a couple of police officers lying. They had the ambulance officer lying, and then they had my witness lying. And then they had me not reply, and they thought, right, case closed. She is admitting fault.
Silence. You're a criminal defence lawyer. What do people have? They have a right to silence, don't they?
Well, that's true, but I mean, if they had actually, the point being that they should have followed up. They
fine.
should have
You need to have an inquiry.
given me a phone call, sent me a second email, and they've acknowledged now, by the way, that they should have done that. The investigator's supervisor said, "I do accept that we should have followed up," and he, in the end, apologised profusely for not interviewing me. But anyway, story hasn't finished, because what happened was that they concluded their investigation and said that I was a screaming lunatic, etc. And then the IPCA was provided the original report, and the IPCA said, "Well, look, we found this new footage that shows the entire thing from start to finish. You need to go and re-examine your conclusions in the light of that footage." So they reopened the investigation. But even then, when they reopened the investigation, they still did not contact me a second time for an interview. I have provided the IPCA now with a list of 28 errors. 28 errors with the investigation, including the fact that not a single one of the police officers who arrested and lied about me was actually interviewed. They were asked for written statements, and they were not asked questions. So the investigator formed a view about whether I was a screaming lunatic and whether my arrest had been justified based on written statements from police officers who had never been asked difficult questions or any questions at all. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg of the problems with the investigation. If I went into all of that, we'd be here all day. But suffice it to say that it was shockingly done. But worse than that, they didn't, when they reopened the investigation, they didn't go back and compare in detail or at all the police statements with the footage. So they just had a vague perception that, well, Lucy must have been shouting because they've all said that.
So they were provided with the footage
They were
by
provided
the
with footage.
IPCA. Yep.
Oh, no, the videographer provided it to them. But they were provided the footage. At the back of their minds, they subconsciously had the assumption that I had been shouting before the footage started. A whole load of assumptions about what happened. Did not compare the police statements with the footage, so didn't notice that actually all of this shouting was alleged to have happened at points in the footage where that are recorded and that we have on record. So didn't notice that actually it says that they were shouting and that I was shouting when the police had spread out to form of a protective screen. But just assumed, because of their presumptions about police honesty, that, oh, well, of course they're telling the truth. And Lucy's admitted that she didn't tell the truth because she doesn't want to be interviewed.
But that's not telling the truth. That's not actually telling anything.
Well, in the original complaint,
Yeah.
the contents of the complaint, oh, well, she must be lying. So they then look at the footage without considering my perspective on things at all and just think, oh, she's just being a troublemaker. Arrest is justified, case closed. While completely shutting me out of the process. And without noticing that the police statements flatly contradict not just the footage but each other. Because one of them, like the ambulance officer, for example, says that I was cowering in terror and that she thought that I was suffering from mental illness because I was so terrified, and that I was asking the police for help because I was so scared.
Right.
Well, the police say that at the exact same window in time, because we're talking about a window of a few seconds and you can narrow it down to that window, at that exact same window in time that I was screaming my head off and going berserk. So which is it? Is someone being highly aggressive or is someone cowering in terror? Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about that at trial. Anyway, yeah, I was completely shut out of the police investigation. It was a shocking mess. It was shockingly biased. Their prejudices and their assumptions about the honesty and trustworthiness of police strongly shaped their interpretation of the evidence. And so while the IPCA were decent and conscientious and honest and unbiased, the police was just... the police investigation was a shocker. And what I found, actually, another of the 28 errors that I provided to the IPCA, was that I found out that even though the police were putting out a press release about me in response to the IPCA report, that the investigator only read the 3 sentences containing the IPCA's recommendations and not 98% of the report. If he had bothered to read it, he would have found out that one of the police officers says that I was not yelling. But he didn't bother to read it. Why? Because, oh, well, the IPCA are armchair critics. They're out of touch with the practical realities and pressures of policing, but decent, hard-working, morally upstanding police officers like Vaughan Perry face.
Vaughan Perry, the kidnapper.
Yes, the serial kidnapper, the liar, and the bully who accused me of mental illness. Well, the IPCA just don't understand the pressures that people like that face, and so we're not even going to bother to read their conclusions. Well, we're not going to bother to read their argumentation, I should say, when we're putting out a press release about someone
who's clearly crazy.
Yeah, who's clearly crazy. In response to the IPCA report, but why read the report that we're responding to when we already know what happened?
I just had a thought. Have you cross-referenced all of those police officers that were involved in that, and have you come up against them in court?
Not yet.
Because it might be a personal thing.
The trial is happening from the 3rd to the 6th of August 2026 in Auckland High Court. And I have been...
So what are you suing them for?
breaches of the Bill of Rights Act, so right to freedom of expression, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this? Trying to think back.
Cross-referencing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've drafted a whole load of cross-examinations, yes.
Yeah, it may be that one of the police recognised you and then decided, well, we'll just go and push around.
No, I don't think so.
You don't
I'm
think
too
so?
junior.
Oh, well. I mean, it could be something as simple as that kicked it off.
I
And
don't
then
think
there's
so.
the cover-up and everything that's come afterwards.
I think they would have bullied anyone. Like, lone counter-protesters are the highlight of their week because they get to bully them and there are no witnesses. And so there was another person on the same day, Daniel Maxwell, who was also arrested on Vaughan Perry's orders and whose arrest was also found to be a flagrant breach of the Bill of Rights by the IPCA. They said that this was outrageous, that this was utterly unjustified, that he... and you can go and read the facts of the case in the IPCA report. He's Mr. N. But basically, you're dealing with a very evil man, Vaughan Perry, who thinks that he's Mr. Bulletproof because he can get away with anything. He's got away with stuff in the past. The police will shield me, and who enjoys arresting people and destroying people's lives.
You've continued to protest.
I have indeed.
Silently, as a point of principle now, because you were stopped on the first one. Have the police had further interactions with you?
Not many, but I have.
Yeah.
They were aware that that I'm suing the police, and so that has protected me to some extent. But what I have witnessed is that they bullied Daniel Maxwell for weeks, even months. He was arrested 3 times. They love arresting people.
That's part of the little bullying tactics.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
On one occasion, he turned up to protest with a megaphone, and within about less than a minute, they approached him. And then he went silent. I thought, what's going on there? So I asked him about it afterwards, and he said, they just blackmailed me. They found out that I had breached bail conditions on an unrelated charge by going north of Whangarei to attend Waitangi Day at Waitangi. And they said, unless you will leave this protest, which is totally unrelated to this other charge that he was facing, unless you leave this protest, we will charge you with
Bail breach.
Breach of bail. That's blackmail. I thought that was absolutely shocking. And I saw this thing quite a bit. But the police tended to leave me alone because they knew what would happen if they arrested me.
Mind you, they also won't protect you either if the other protesters, the ones that you're counter-protesting, decide they want to set upon you or block you or impede your right to walk wherever you want.
Well, actually, the protesters tended to leave me alone. I was far more scared of the police than I ever was of the protesters. The protesters just tended to ignore me, which was perfectly fine by me because I never shouted at them, didn't want to get into arguments with them. So it's the police that were the problem. I was aware of where the police were at all times when I was protesting. And I texted each week. I would ask my friends, hey guys, if I'm arrested, would you please tell my dad that I've been arrested?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to tell my dad where I was because I didn't want him to stress out about me possibly getting arrested. So I just didn't tell him where I was on Saturday or Sunday afternoons.
Yeah.
But I said every week I said if I don't text you guys by 6 p.m. It means I've been arrested. Please call my dad to tell him where I am.
Yeah.
Because I knew that it could very easily happen, and I did from time to time encounter police who were like that, who wanted to arrest me. But usually they tended to leave me alone. But yes, I after I was arrested, had to wait for the jury trial to finish, so another 2 weeks. But after that, started attending every week. Partially because I thought, well, it's outrageous that these people are protesting against Israel when it's responding to a massacre of its own people. But partially because I wanted to send a message to the police that
you're not going to stop me.
Yeah, exactly. To make a stand for freedom of expression. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, albeit with an 8-month break at one point. I stopped going for a while. But I still go. And I've outlasted the police. They've stopped coming along to protect me. Where was I going with this? There was somewhere I wanted to go with it. Oh, yes. Shameless plug. So after a year or two of protesting regularly on the streets, I realised that really the only people who were standing up to the anti-Israel protesters were me and Destiny Church. But I was aware that there are thousands of people in this country who don't agree with the other side's message.
Absolutely.
But just aren't showing up and aren't... there's no...
Or they do things in other ways, like myself, for example.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, no, well, please don't take that in a
Oh,
derogatory
no,
way.
I'm not.
But my point was that there's just a significant demographic here who aren't involved in this corridor, this conversation. And so I set up a Facebook page called NZ Against Hamas, which has now grown to over 1,200 members.
There you go.
And basically to get more people involved in speaking up on this issue, between the two extremes of, on the one hand, the anti-Israel protesters, and on the other hand, Destiny Church.
See, but you've been described as a right-wing Zionist.
Well, my group has. I don't think anyone's accused me of being a right-wing Zionist.
But if you're in the group, then you're a right-wing Zionist, that's true. Right? But hang on, you're apolitical, you're slightly left-leaning, which is what most of New Zealanders are, really. Even the National Party members are slightly left-leaning as far as I'm concerned. And you voted Labour.
Yep.
Doesn't sound like you're a right-wing Zionist to me.
No. No, I wouldn't describe myself as right-wing at all.
Righteous, perhaps. Right.
Well, I mean, even writing for Kiwi Blog, it's not my normal demographic, really.
No.
I'm not a libertarian. I actually detest the ACT Party. Sorry, but I do.
Oh, I'm not an ACT Party supporter by any means. David Seymour's even threatened to sue me.
So, yeah, I would describe myself as centre-left, and actually...
Like the National Party?
The Jewish community, a significant proportion of the Jewish community are involved in my group. So the admin team includes people like Juliet Moses, Susanna Malcolm, and other prominent figures from within the Jewish community. Now, Susanna Malcolm is from the Beth Shalom synagogue, which is the more liberal synagogue.
Well, by and large, the Jewish community in New Zealand have been, for many, many years, very strong supporters of the Labour Party.
Yes.
Very strong.
Well, a significant proportion of our members would describe themselves as left-wing. But anyway, NZ Against Hamas. Yeah, if people want to join this page, I very much encourage you to do so. It's you can find our private page, which is the one I particularly suggest people join, at facebook.com/groups/nzah.private. So that's facebook.com/groups/nzah.private. You can also find it by searching NZ Against Hamas in the search bar on Facebook. And it will come up and you'll see a public page and a private page. Join the private one because that's where everything's happening. Our public page is still a lot smaller than our private one.
Now, you've had some people infiltrate that, haven't you?
We did.
People or person?
Well, number of people.
Yeah.
But yes, we had a very militant member of the other side, Tim O'Shea, join our group using 3 separate spy accounts.
Yeah, when you wrote that article at Kiwi Blog about that, I quickly went and checked, and I had 2 of those spy accounts following me.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And he's masquerading as a woman.
Yes.
And then my partner also, I warned her about it, and she said that woman was following her.
Yep.
But which wasn't a woman, it's Tim O'Shea.
Yep.
And he's a real estate agent.
And to be clear, he's not transgender. He's a cis man. So I'm not saying anything anti-trans here. It's just that he's pretending to be a cis woman. He has... And actually, this is an important public service announcement.
It is.
So he has 3 accounts that I found that were had infiltrated my page. The first is Sally Jade Jones. The second is Cao Imheen B. Morcant. So CAOIMHIN space B space MORCANT. And the third one is Charles Gray, spelt with an A, so GRAY.
So how did you identify that it was Tim O'Shea that was operating those 3 accounts?
It became obvious to us that there had been people who had infiltrated the page to cause trouble because screenshots were leaked from our page. So I put together a spreadsheet of our members and started going through it. And eventually came across this account where it was obvious that it was a fake account. Well, it was obvious because I asked a whole load of mutual friends, because I had 30 mutual friends, and this was Sally Jade Jones.
Do you know this person?
Yeah, do you know this person? Not a single one did. And so I thought, well, this is weird. So I Googled the name, and it turns out that it's a known alias of Tim O'Shea, who is a particularly militant and nasty member of the other side whom I have met at the anti-Israel protests. But that website also contained details of a second alias of his.
Right.
And so when I ran the name through our membership list, it came up as a second account, also controlled by Tim O'Shea. And that was Cao Imheen B. Morcant, or Kevin Morgan, he is also known.
As opposed to Kelvin Morgan, who's a vociferous person on Twitter.
Yeah, no, Kevin Morgan.
Kevin Morgan.
Cao Imheen B. Morcant, I believe, is Gaelic for Kevin Morgan.
Right.
And now Cao Imheen B. Morcant had messaged me some months ago asking me for information about a particular protester that I had seen on the street. And he had said to me, I have a database of information on members of the far left that we're compiling dossiers on.
As soon as people say dossier, I sort of like do that thing in the Simpsons movie, where Homer Simpson backs through the hedge.
Yeah. And he said, at the time, he said that this was the far left who had done that they were looking into or compiling information on. But he said that he did this in concert with a large group of other people who share his political views, who were also contributing to this database. So at the time, I just said, well, I don't know the name of this guy that you're asking me about, so I can't really provide you with any information about him. So he said, well, can you find out this guy's name? And then, so he then contacted me sometime after that from his second account, Charles Gray. And that was how I figured out that Charles Gray was a fake account, by the way, but we'll get to that. What he did was, he said, oh, so have you looked into that for me yet, please? And what he didn't realise is that he was using the wrong account, that he had originally messaged me from the other one, Kevin Morgan, Cao Imheen B. Morcant, but had now screwed up and got the wrong guy messaged me from the wrong account. So he referred to this previous conversation that we'd had, and I was just like, what are you talking about, dude? I've never talked with you about this. And he just made some BS excuse at the time, and I just didn't take too much notice of it. To be honest, I thought that he was just OTT with his self-importance. I thought, well, come on, guys, you have a database of people,
A dossier.
with information on them. Like this is self-importance. I don't really think much of it. But when I found out that Kao Imheen B. Morkant, or Kevin Morgan, was a known alias of Tim O'Shea, and that Kao Imheen and Charles Gray were both, I figured out that they both belonged to the same person, and that he had said that they were compiling dossiers of information on the far left. I realised that actually it's the opposite. They are far left extremists, communists, who are compiling information on political opponents in New Zealand, people that they perceive to be right-wing or conservative. And so I wrote
or pro-Israel.
Yes.
Which adds a kind of a sinister extra step to it.
So I wrote a Kiwi blog post about that. It didn't get as much attention as I might have hoped, to warn people.
We published it yesterday.
Good. Well, I wrote it to warn people, guys, these accounts have thousands of friends. They are being used to harvest your data to compile dossiers on you for when the revolution comes and they can shoot us all.
Yeah, they love that. We'll be first against the wall.
Yeah. I do very much suggest that if people are Facebook friends with those people, that they remove them. Sally J. Jones has over 4,000 friends. Kao Imheen B. Morkant, or Kevin Morgan, has something like 1,800. And Charles Gray, he's deactivated his account now that I've outed him.
Not the other two, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I think that's because Charles Gray had only 800 friends, which is far less. So I think that he probably thought that he could just dispose of that account. Apparently, according to the website where I found this information about him, he has dozens of Facebook accounts and social media accounts that are used to spy on people.
Well, that's all right. We'll see what he has to say when I call him up in the coming days. Because I'm not going to let that go, right? That's very sneaky behaviour. Having been, I don't like the word victim, but it's the only word that comes to mind, a victim of someone who's doing that sort of thing, trying to find out who you're connected with, who you're dealing with and things. I find that very sinister, and the fact that they appear to be targeting people who are pro-Israel. I'll ask you this question. We've got a few minutes left, but I'll ask you this question. I haven't asked you whether you're Jewish.
I'm not.
You're not. Okay, well, that's good. Do you think New Zealand has an anti-Semitism problem?
I think that New Zealand has an intellectual dishonesty problem. And I've written about that on Kiwi blog too. Do I think that most of the people at the anti-Israel protests on Queen Street would be personally hostile to a Jewish person in the context of a dinner party? No, I don't. But do I think that means that they are necessarily intellectually dishonest? That they are necessarily intellectually honest about their views? No.
Right.
I think that the reason that they are taking an interest in this conflict is because it makes them feel good about themselves to take the side of the oppressed Indigenous people in a binary black and white situation where the Palestinians are the good guys and the Israelis are the settler colonial.
So Jewish people aren't Indigenous at all?
Yeah, well, according to this narrative. But they want to believe this because it makes them feel good about themselves to take the side of the oppressed against the oppressor. Which in turn makes them feel better about themselves in general because, everything in life is attributable to the system and they don't have to take responsibility for their own actions. It's effectively, it's the same thing that, I'm not saying that they're all communists, they're not, but it's the same thing that drove communism.
So I visited Israel in 2014. I got lots of questions from Israelis there about why do people in New Zealand have this view, or why do people in New Zealand have this, and why is it mostly all of these reasons for, they're trying to understand, they're always asking questions, trying to understand why something is. And I think I was like the first person who ever put it into a geopolitical view for them. And I said, this is a hangover from the Cold War.
Yep. Yes.
This is not a Israel versus Arab, although that is the underlying thing. This is not Jewish against Muslim, even though that's an underlying thing. The real cause of the antagonism is because Israel was backed by the United States. All of the Arab states all around were backed by Russia or by China and supplied weapons by China. If you have a look at the battlefields, it's American equipment versus Russian equipment, basically.
I think it's a bit more complicated than that, but
It is.
I largely agree. Or I
But
should
when you've
say,
got the Green Party, who are communists, large number of them, socialists at best, but very hard left, there's an inbred ethos amongst them that Israel is bad.
yes,
Right? It's just automatic. Israel is bad. And I think that comes from the way that the left wing, and in fact the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO under Yasser Arafat was trained by the Russians. Mm-hmm. The Palestinian Declaration, which outlines where from the river to the sea comes from, was written by the Russians for Yasser Arafat. It's a clear communist influence in the hostility towards Israel. And I was trying to explain that to them, and they kind of couldn't work it out. But when you look at who is protesting and the who's who of the left wing that are protesting in support of Palestine, it kind of brings home to me that the Conservatives in New Zealand say nothing and the left wing say and do things. They're obvious. They tell us what they are.
Well, that's the point behind NZ Against Hamas, to get people to start speaking up.
Yeah, and we're allowed to. You're allowed to stand there with a sign quietly. Yep. There's no law against that. You can counter protest. There's no law against that. And I don't necessarily 100% agree with Brian Tamaki's tactics or Destiny Church's tactics, but at least he's given it a go. He's a rascal and a larrikin, and he might be a bit wrong-headed in certain aspects of it, but he's entitled to do that. And I do think we have a problem, particularly in two political parties in New Zealand, or three actually, where there is a latent anti-Semitism or anti-Israel preference.
I wrote a Kiwi blog article about this, and I said basically, and it's go and look it up, because I can't really cover everything that I've written in the space of this podcast. But I say, stop accusing anti-Israel Westerners of anti-Semitism and start accusing them of intellectual dishonesty. Because otherwise they just say, criticism of the Israeli government doesn't mean that we are hostile towards Jews, and then the conversation closes. And sure, that's absolutely true, but that is overlooking the
It's intellectually dishonest.
It is intellectually dishonest. It is overlooking the point that there is a staggering degree of intellectual dishonesty on the issue of the Palestine-Israel conflict in New Zealand and across the Western world. And I've covered some examples. So 3 days after a massacre of Israelis on October 7, on October the 10th, they're announcing protests against Israel.
Who hadn't done anything yet.
And accusing them of genocide even at that point. That is intellectual dishonesty. And I provide something like 15 examples of intellectual dishonesty. Max Harris wrote an article for the Dominion Post that was grossly intellectually dishonest about Israel's conflict with Hezbollah. Can't provide all of the examples now, but go and have a read. So I prefer the term intellectual dishonesty to anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's been an argument going on X with Juliet Moses and Philip Matthews, who's a journalist in Christchurch. Again, it's about free speech. It's about the author who's been thrown out of the Writers' Festival or whatever it is in Australia, and he's sitting there justifying her position. But her position is very clear, and she was celebrating October 7. She had pictures of the paragliders and all of that sort of thing, and he's saying, oh no, that's not anti-Semitism. But he's intellectually dishonest as well.
Yes.
There's a couple of journalists that are still on X who are agitators, really, pushing a particular barrow. I mean, I just generally don't engage with them. I tend to only speak rather than reply to people on X. But there is a dishonesty. People say, "Oh no, look, I'm not anti-Israel. I'm anti-Zionism." Like, really? Like, how in your brain can you separate those two? Right? Zionism's the right of Jews to live in Israel.
Well, how is it these people who claim to be so pro-Indigenous and pro-Tino Rangatiratanga and pro-Maori self-determination cannot support Jewish self-determination in their historic homeland when they were expelled from their historic homeland by...
multiple times.
By a colonial empire, the Roman Empire.
Well, it was before there's the Roman Empire, and then before that, though, they were captured by the Egyptians, and before that, they were prisoners of Babylon. So multiple times. I mean, Al-Aqsa Mosque is sitting on top of the remains of the Second Temple. Mm. So if it's sitting on top of the remains of the Second Temple, the temple was there first.
Yeah.
Yep. And Islam didn't come about until 600 or 700 years after all of those events.
Well, I mean, there's so much that could be said on this subject, but suffice it to say that there's been a continuous Jewish presence in the area for 2,000 years.
Well, more than that.
More than that, that's true. But the point is that simply because the vast majority of them were expelled by the Roman Empire doesn't mean that all of them were. They were
enslaved, actually, after the revolt, and Titus put down the revolt, and then took
the Bar Kokhba revolts. Yep.
And then took them all back to Rome to help build the Colosseum.
Yep. So there's been a continuous Jewish presence in the land for 2,000 years. 450,000 hectares of land was purchased from the landlords prior to 1948. The vast majority of the land was actually rented by the local Arabs from Turkish landlords who were absentee landlords.
It was called the Ottoman Empire.
Yep, the Ottoman Empire, sure. And also, the vast majority of the land at the time was uninhabited. It was empty, and so there was no country called Palestine that was.
There's never been a country called.
Yes.
But Palestine was an insult the Romans devised.
Yes.
To subjugate the Jewish population after defeating them. We'll call this area Palestine, which was a Latinization of Philistine, the ancient enemy of Hebrews.
So it was just simply a geographical area controlled by Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire, in which a whole lot of Arabs happened to live, and they didn't have a distinct identity as Palestinians at that point.
No,
that
was
the invention of the KGB in the 1960s.
That's right, 1960s and 70s.
Yep.
100% invention of the KGB, and that's where all of this comes back to.
And then in 1948, what actually happened was the UN didn't just create Israel, which is the focus.
Created two.
They created two states, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs.
And the Israelis said, "Yep, we're okay with that."
And then the Arabs
said, "No, we're not.
Yep.
We're attacking."
And so what the surrounding Arab states did was they instructed the Arabs in the area to move out of the area so that they could go in and wipe out the nascent Jewish state.
Yeah, it's all right. You'll be able to go home soon. We'll have wiped them out.
But then they lost. But the people had already left the land and couldn't come back. The ones who stayed predominantly received Israeli citizenship. None of this is well understood in the popular discourse.
But and that losing is continued every time. 1948, 1956,
Yep.
1967,
Yes.
1973.
1983 with the
Lebanese wars.
Yep.
Every time Israel wins.
Yep.
Don't go to war with them. You're going to lose. Egypt saw the folly of that.
Well, I know that we're about to close, but I'll make one final comment. That is not to say, however, that I don't believe in a Palestinian state. I do believe in a Palestinian state. I think that Gaza and the West Bank should, in the long run, be given to the Palestinians as their country. However, I don't think that this can be done in the immediate future because of what has just happened on October 7th. At the moment, in the West Bank, Hamas is the overwhelmingly most popular political party. What are you going to do? Give East Jerusalem to Hamas?
Not one Gaza resident, not one, said over there that's where some hostages are. Not one.
Well, in year 2000, Yasser Arafat was offered 90% of the West Bank, land in Western Israel to compensate for lost land in the West Bank,
And he
the
turned it
10%.
down.
Control of East Jerusalem as capital of the Palestinian state, and control of the Temple Mount, or a deal where he controlled, it's complicated, but control of the Temple Mount. He refused. Why? Because the Palestinians do not want a two-state solution. They want the whole thing.
That's the thing that I get, and I've said this to Winston multiple times. So why do you keep going on about a two-state solution? It's never going to happen.
Yep.
No, the Israelis will agree to it. Right?
Well,
They always have. 8 times they've agreed to a two-state solution. 8 times the Palestinians have rejected it. It's not going to happen. And after October 7, there's not going to be a two-state solution. The Israelis have had enough.
Well, that's more or less what I think. However, I'd provide the caveat that maybe a few decades from now, when the dynamics have changed and things have changed, then it will be time for talks about a two-state solution again. But not right now.
It can't happen until Iran is neutralised.
Yes.
And that's largely almost complete, the neutralisation of them. It's just a few things need to change.
Well, what can be said, though, is that the Israeli settler violence towards Palestinians at the moment in the West Bank is extremely shocking. And that, sure, we can focus on, the Palestinians don't want peace, and so therefore we can't have a state, and so a Palestinian state. And I agree with that, not at the moment.
Well, there used to be a state. It's called Transjordan, right? They forget that, and it was largely Palestinian.
But the point being that, yes, I don't think that now is the right time for a Palestinian state. However,
You have to earn it.
what can be done is that Israel can start reining in the settlers and stop them from going berserk. And that much I do believe in, and that I think is the pathway to peace. Just controlling the settlers, controlling settler violence, allowing Palestinian civil rights, ending detention without trial. These are all things that Israel can implement, and then just wait it out, see what happens. So I'm not saying that I don't believe in Palestinian civil rights. I'm not saying that Israel is by any stretch of the imagination perfect, and I don't.
Well, no country is perfect.
And I'm not saying that there can't be things that Israel can't itself do towards peace that it's not doing at present. I do believe that it could be doing a lot more. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that a few decades from now maybe there will be a Palestinian state, and that I want that. But there's all this other context at the same time.
I mean, Golda Meir had that famous statement. She said, when Palestinians love their children as much as Israelis do, we'll have peace.
Well, I think she said, when they love their children more than they hate the Israelis, then we'll have peace. Yeah.
Well, maybe one day. You know, that was very perceptive of her at the time. But we haven't seen that. But the first thing to do is disarm the militants, and Hezbollah is largely neutralised now. Hamas.
By the pager attack.
I can't wait till the Netflix movie about that. I mean, it's an incredible story. But, Hamas is largely defeated as well. Iran is on their knees. Everybody else is around there is trying to sue for peace. Jordan and Egypt have been at peace with Israel for decades.
Decades.
You know,
Saudi Arabia wants to join the
Abraham Accords.
Accords.
You know, and everyone criticises Donald Trump, but those were his. And on that note, that's probably a good point to stop. Thank you so much for coming on The Good Oil. And hopefully we get a few more people aware of what's going on around there. And I admire your bravery.
Thanks.
It takes a lot of effort to stand up and counter-protest a lot of screaming people.
And go to war with the police.
And go to war with the police. Not many people do that. Yeah, so once again, thank you, Lucy, for coming on the show.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hey, now welcome to the show, where the wind's blowing strong and the truth can flow. This is the good oil. Catch a vibe today with Cam Slater leading us all the way.